Hey everyone, it's time to review the second batch of Dragon Quest The Adventures of Dai units. Today we will be looking at Baran, the Dragon Knight, Immortal Hyunckel, and superior being Hadlar. So let's get right into it. Baran is the only unit with a Brave Shift in this batch of units. So his base form, he is, or in his base form, he is a hybrid unit, an actual hybrid unit even, with a hybrid LB that we'll be talking about in a few minutes. And he has a fixed lightning hybrid attack. And in his Brave Shift, he's just a regular lightning hard-locked magic LB finisher, where he actually becomes the demon he is. And yeah, let's take a look at the example abilities here. On the one hand, we do have that modifier increase, the LB modifier increase. Now, it states 800x modifier increase for his base form LB, which is a fixed attack. Like I mentioned, it's a hybrid attack. They have their own issues that I'll be talking about in a few. And he also increases the LB modifier for his regular LB in his Brave Shift by 50x. It has also a storing ability, which is nice. Also 45% lightning amp, so it's not bad. It's kind of amusing to see that Alum is capable of doing something like this on a cooldown instead of a Grandis, unlike other units, Kekstar, for example. But it's good to see that they still know how to properly do units sometimes. And on the Brave Shift side, we do have that 180 human killer buff for self, full LB fill, and one more time that storing mechanic. These storing mechanics don't stack, by the way, so you only get either one. But it's nice to have that he has multiple choice or multiple sources of magic store. The kit, honestly, I'm not a huge fan of his kit because both forms are rather bland. They don't do really much. He has a 100% all imperil ability on it, which is nice. You don't actually need imperil from an Esper for that, but still 100% imperils, they just don't do anything these days. It's all at least 135 or better. So yeah. What I do like though is his slew of passives. Like he has innate or almost innate LB cap, for example. He has 250 baseline, which is nice. So he basically caps LB with his STMR equipped. He also has, does he actually have 6x cap? I think he does. I should have checked beforehand, but I believe he has innate 6x cap, but no matter what, I always calc with the chain cap close, so even if he doesn't, he'll be fine. But what I do know is that he has innate 400% true double hand magic. You can see this in the middle of the screen. It's the two ability, the passives over here, where my mouse is hovering over. Instant 400 magic TDH. You don't need to gear for that, which is rather handy. Just like a hero die, I'm not a huge fan of splitting the static attack and magic on him onto 2 EX state or 2 EX levels. I would have preferred it all being on EX plus 3 or EX plus 2. But so be it. The other nice thing about him is that he has 6 innate killers at 200%, meaning gearing for these killers in particular is going to be super easy, and thus his damage will be a slightly higher than what I calc him with, because as usual I calc against an absolute worst case scenario where every unit deals a little bit less damage than they could if they were built for their best cases. Alright, so let's check out the limit burst. Let's talk about the base limit burst first, because this is the most interesting one. So it states hybrid, lightning hybrid asterisk damage 1.6k modifier. Again, we have to add the 800x modifier increase from the cooldown, meaning he's 2400x modifier to all enemies on a single hit basis. It also is a 130 Imperil and 85% defense and Spirit Break. Nobody cares about that. So, how do fixed hybrid attacks work? They are they have to be on a super high modifier, because these abilities, they do not use killers, for example. And they also don't use amplification fields. So a field like, let's say, who has lightning amps? Terra's, Crown Terra's lightning amp field, for example, would not work on Dragon Knight Baran in a base form, for example. So all of these things, they don't work, meaning these units, they lose a lot of damage in that regard. You could probably compare this to evocation damage. Evocation damage works in a similar way, just like hybrid damage, but hybrid damage also has another issue, and that issue is you have to use the average of the physical portion and the magical portion, which explains why Baran has 85% defense and Spirit Break. So if a boss has more defense than Spirit, for example, the fixed lightning hybrid attack is going to deal significantly much less damage, because the one half, the physical part in that regard, deals less damage than the Spirit part or the magic part. Then there's also the case of breaks. Do you have both 90% breaks on your party? I don't think you will, because there's only 2 units that have 90% spirit breaks, 3 including Kaido in Clash of Wills. And you don't bring Lightning to fights, and you usually don't bring Louise, outside of Clash that is, into fights as well anymore. Meaning there is no good source of 90% spirit breaks anymore. Will we ever get one more that is actually decent? I don't know, but as it stands, 90% spirit breaks, rare commodity, and it's kind of iffy. So there are a lot of issues with hybrid DPS, and for good reason, Alum and, so to speak, Gumi abandoned that concept. I mean, it does make sense for Baran to have this kind of ability in his kit, given the Adventures of Dragon Quest Die storyline. But for the game, it doesn't translate as well as one might hope. And we'll see that actually applying in my damage calc later, even though the damage calc actually applies both 90% spirit and defense breaks. The Brave Shift Limit Burst, on the other hand, is rather decent. It is a 300% LB boost, which the base form LB is missing, but it does actually use that modifier. So that's still decent. It also applies to Esther's Field. If Esther's Field is on, Dragon Knight Baran in base form also benefits from that. But yeah. Anyway, and the Brave Shifter Limit Burst is a stacking LB, and it caps out at 300x plus the 50x from the damage modifier ability, so 350 in total, which is premium level of damage. Well, old premium level, one should say, because Esther has 375, Knights of Grandshield has 450x with Tyvis, obviously. So it's the old premium value, I would say. However, as we all might know, with the very upcoming Mage variants update, either next week or the week after, depending on how Gumi defines mid-June, a 350x magic LB is going to be worth more than a 350x physical LB. I might do a whole video on the Mage variants thing, because there are a lot of things to keep in mind, and Magic Boost is one thing of that, because that will tip the scales in favor of magic damage dealers. Heavily even. And this Brave Shifted Limit Burst of Dragon Knight Baran, when you see the actual damage calc later in this video, you will instantly realize why a 350x LB modifier is kind of busted on a unit that can magic boost and has very high stats to begin with. Alright, so the Brave Shifted LB, super good. It's good, and I like it. It should have been 135 LB, not LB, Lightning Imperil, but so be it. It's the only downside of it. it, honestly. So let's check out the Trustmaster, Super Trustmaster vision cards, and this is where Hyunckel and Hadlar will also come into play. Just like the review last week, I consolidated all 3 units into this review. Alright, but let's talk about Baran first. His Trustmaster reward is, so to speak, a better version of Summoner Yuna, the premium units, Super Trustmaster. Baran has 1 attack and magic more than Yuna, for example, 56 instead of 55. He has 50% LB damage for everybody, or the TMR has. And for Baran only, it's 250 static attack and magic. This does not stack, by the way. So equipping 2 of those on Baran doesn't do anything. You only benefit once from it. The Super Trustmaster is the highest 2-handed magic sword at 237. It also does 211 attack. Now, I understand for balancing reasons this shouldn't be equal to both, because nobody would have a reason to use dice STMR then, but for damaging or for DPS reasons, it's kind of bad for Baran, because this means his magic damage will always be higher. I mean, it always will be anyway due to magic storing, but for the sake of balance, this should have been either 211 to both, or 237 to both, or 220 to both. Just so that there isn't such a huge offset between his attack stat and magic stat. But then again, the real deal is in his Brave Shift anyway, so I can understand why they did this. But anyway, for magic DPS, super awesome sword. 200 even with 200 variants for mages, great stuff. Good killers, 75 to 3 races, Dragon, Human, Demon. What more can you ask for, honestly, even though all 3 of them are rather common types, but still, it's decent. And Baran gets 250 static attack and magic as well. The vision card is the same as Hero Die, meaning 120 attack magic, 1.5k HP base, and this time I did not mistake it, and I didn't forget to add the magic. So at level 10, 500 static attack and magic, no strings attached, meaning this works for everybody. Meaning the vision card, either on Hero Die or Dragon Knight Baran, is super good if you don't have Knights of Grandchild or Dark Reign's vision card. So it's a good, very good TMR indeed. Great STMR, and well, yeah, the vision card, chef's kiss. Super good. So all 3 of these on Dragon Knight Baran, perfect. I love it. It's good. And if you can afford to pull for Baran, make sure to get at least 1 of them, because I can say for sure that the Trustmaster is going to see use on some units, and the vision card will see plenty of use if you don't have multiple copies of Knights of Grandchild card or Dark Reign vision card. So yeah. And then there's Immortal Hyunckel. He is kind of in a weird spot, honestly, because he's a magic tank, but also tries to do some DPS that scales off of his attack. So that is all kind of super weird to me. But let's talk about the Trustmaster first. It's 54 attack and spirit, 75% true single wheel spirit, meaning with or without the shield, it does not matter. Attack and spirit, but it's locked to swords and spears. Keep that in mind, but it's still a decent TMR in that regard, because swords are rather common these days. Spears, not so much, but it's fine. And Hyunckel only gets 200... Yeah, I knew that was a mistake, but oh well. It's 250 static attack and spirit. I did the same mistake Gumi did in their news. So it's supposed to say spirit on the static stuff, not magic. Excuse me for that. So the Super Trustmaster is a 200 spear, and I made sure that the variance is correct because I was kind of surprised it being 1.75x at the end, but that's what it is. And the huge kicker on his Super Trustmaster is that it's equipable by magic tanks only. There's only one magic tank who can wear spears innately, and that is Hyunckel, so meaning this Super Trustmaster is basically useless outside of himself. It's 220 attack, 237 spirit, it has stone and fairy killer, physical magical, 75%, 20% resistances to everything but lightning, and 500 static attack and spirit. On that one I did it correctly, for whatever reason, to Hyunckel himself. The vision card is basically the same as last week, just a different sprite, so 100 all stats, 1.5k base HP, 50 LB, 4 and 7 combined that is, and 300 static all stats for Dragon Quest Adventure die units only. So honestly, I'm just gonna say it, I think the Super Trustmaster is trash tier because it just has no usage outside of Hyunckel. The vision card is trash tier because it's just not good compared to the other one, and the STMR is decent, I would say. I think you will never end up using any of these items in a real world scenario here, unless you really unironically use Hyunckel, which I just don't see happening. Alright, let's talk about the superior being Hadlar. He has a rather interesting TMR because it's the only one that's not an accessory. Even though it states that it's an accessory, that's my mistake. I checked so many times that everything is correct, but it's a materia, as is evident from the icon. And the Trustmaster being a materia has 500 static magic to Dragon Quest die units only. Now, realistically, this really only applies to Hadlar himself, to Baran, and to Popp. But all three of those do want to use this because 500 static magic, depending on the boss type, if it's dual race, this is super worth it over a killer materia. And if it's single race, it highly depends on how much killers you already have versus that 500 static magic. So it is an all-around super good materia to have. And it also kind of falls into the same ballpark as just deliberately checking whether a killer materia over a static attack materia is worth it on graph, for example. It's pretty much the same case here. You will always have to check, is that 500 static magic worth it over a killer materia? On a single race, that may not be the case, but on a dual race type boss, this may very well be the case. And most of the time it actually is worth it to use the static magic over killer materia. The Super Trustmaster is a two-handed fist, average fist variance 1.45 to 1.65. It has 180 attack, meaning it's a little bit lower than Mam's one, but this one has 218 magic. It being two-handed means whenever there's a two-handed fist mage, this could be nice. Spoiler, Hadlar himself doesn't use this in his best in case or best in slot build. But it has demon and human killer, physical and magical, and 250 static magic for Hadlar. It's another mistake. I copied this from Popp. I thought I was done with all these small mistakes, but apparently I'm not. So it's for Hadlar only, not for Popp. My bad. Vision card, So the TMR is strong for Baran and Popp, and obviously Hadlar himself. But they do clock one more materia slot of theirs, which, especially in Popp's case, is kind of bad. So it's always hard to judge, because Popp at this point uses 3 different materia slots. One, that killer materia to boost his modifier, 2, the 750 static magic materia, 3, Hadlar's TMR. That leaves 1 materia slot for killers, which is ooh. The STMR is nice to have, and well, the vision card is still a lot of trash. So let's check out the damage calculation and the comparison. So if you want to check the parameters, pause the video as usual, and we'll get right to the builds. So this is Hadlar's build. The values that you see on this slide are technically correct. I think I have a slight difference on the magic part in my sheet, but we'll see in a second. So yeah, but this is it, using Hadlar's TMR, the Vision World the Vision World materia, his own STMR, TMR, etc, etc. So basically the good stuff. Then there is Hyunckel using his own STMR, the only unit to actually use this. Then there is Hadlar. He uses, I think this should be the rod from, what's his name? Even though it's not looking like a rod, but it's the rod from Return the Call, because it scales the best. It has higher magic, and it also has 100% LB damage on it, which is rather nice. And I also revisited Popp to basically add the 750 static magic material onto him. Now, as you can see, this also uses the Vision World Killer material that handily applies a mod boost. And this is what I meant, like he has 3 material slots locked in. That modifier, that Vision World thingy, number 2 of the static stuff, and Hadlar's TMR. He also has to use Black Rod, which is totally fine, but he also kind of has to use the Insignia, his own TMR, meaning 5 out of, I believe, yeah, 5 out of 9 slots are fixed on him. And that means it's a huge issue to gear for stuff. Now, as you can see, he's super awesome versus Demon, he's good versus Spirits, that's all fine. But the minute you try to do something else, like Avian Killer would absolutely break this unit. So that is always something to keep in mind when gearing Popp. Also keep in mind that his Medora is Fire Ice, meaning if the boss has higher resistance to either one of those, his damage falls apart rather quickly. So here's the damage comparison. Before you jump to super high conclusions, this damage chart already is adjusted for Mage variants. So that means units such as Baran, Angela, Dankrain, Popp, etc., they will scale highly. They do them very, very differently than from they would used to be, and the results that you will see in game right now are vastly different. Baran, without the Mage variants update, is no good. No good at all. Same for Popp, same for Hadlar. Yeah, and Hyunckel is regular because he's physical attack. But yeah, as you can see, the Mage variants update does a lot of good things, because Sky, for example, she is calculated here with her Clash stuff. But Darkrain, Baran, and Angela handily, well, Darkrain not so much because Darkrain is a trash tier DPS, but Baran and Angela are very high above. So like Baran has about 10% more damage than Clash of Wills Sky, keep that in mind, and Angela is just, I don't know, she's in a different league of her own. But as you can see, this is the point I was making earlier. Units that, or Mage DPS that can use Focus, Baran, Angela for example, they just skyrocket in terms of damage. Because the first real DPS that we have here that is not a Clash of Worlds unit is Knights of Grandchild. And Knights of Grandchild just looks like old news compared to Angela with variants. Like, Knights of Grandchild is technically speaking just 78% of a varianced up Angela. That is crazy. And I have no clue how Gumi or Alam is going to handle this going forward. I mean, yeah, I know, obviously Balthier is coming, Titus is coming, those will mop the floor with Angela, Baran, etc. But how is Gumi going to handle this going forward with Clash of Wills units? Because what good reason would I have to use, say, Roberta over Angela in terms of damage? Roberta does so many things, morale, support, etc. But just for pure damage, let's just isolate the thing to damage. Why would I use, for damage only, Roberta over Angela, for example? There is no good reason to. Even though, as you can see, Roberta does pretty well when you force her to go magic through double hand. But yeah. Magic DPS are going to skyrocket soon. It's either next week or the week after, so it's going to be rather interesting. And my plan for damage comparisons, especially when it comes to evaluating plus ones, minus ones for the scoring, so the rating, I think I will have to go and equalize things, meaning if a unit, be it physical or magical, it has to be compared to the highest unit in general. Meaning I would have to kind of compare Kane to Angela's damage, and if that's just half, which it almost is, well, Dragoon Kane all of a sudden loses a point versus not losing a point if compared to Knights of Grandchild. So it's always going to be a tough call, and I do have 1 or 2 more weeks to think about this. But all in all, the new Dragon Quest die units, Baran, Hyunckel and Hadlar, they sim surprisingly well with Mage variants. Well, maybe not so surprisingly because Magic Store is a thing, but so to say, it's all good. Baran Braveshift is the best of the batch, much like Hero Die or Is it actually Dragon Knight Die? I don't know, but if he is facing demons, he is pretty good too. But as you can see, Dragonoid Baran, the Braveshifted Baran, is actually pretty good due to Magic Store. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that all of these Magic DPS, be it Popp, be it Baran, be it Hadlar, they are hard locked to their specific elements. They are not as flexible as Roberta, they are not as flexible as Angela, who are physically typed, imbuable mages, and those will always be better because they are more flexible. And this is also reflected in the ratings. So Baran, even though he's super high up there, he's only a 7 out of 10 because he is hard locked to lightning. But there's also other issues that keep him from scoring higher. But let's talk about the good things first. So super slot efficient, instant TDH magic cap. He is 300 LB instantly with his TMR equipped. Has a very good vision card. High damage with 89% of Angela. And yeah, just a very, very good STMR that warrants his own or its own +1, just like I did with Hero Die last week. The bad things, he has no weapon emperor, which I find rather lacking, and also only a 130% fire emperor. If you missed it last week, I established that the baseline for +1 is 135 emperor going forward. And what I also find lacking is that Baran has no party support whatsoever. So yeah, Baran, 7 out of 10, I think that's a good assessment. He does have good usage, especially against lightning weak bosses, and he does is a very solid LB finisher, especially when considering mage variants. So the 7 out of 10 is considering the mage variants, because if it wasn't for mage variants, he'd be only a 6 out of 10. But I just don't want to mess with recalculating and re-rating units, because I already had to do this for Popp and it was annoying. So I'll just accelerate or speed things up and just calculate with mage variants in mind. That saves me time later. So yeah, just keep in mind the results will differ tremendously before mage variants is live. Then there is Hyunckel. Hyunckel, I mean, he does do decent damage, 68% of Knights of Grandchild. TMR is nice, but it doesn't warrant a +1 or scoring increase. Has okay-ish party support, but that also does not support or warrant a +1, because it's only 200% light dark resistance and 100 fire ice resistance, which I don't feel like is enough party support to give him that +1, especially when you compare this to units such as Esther, who is also a tank, and she does way more than Hyunckel. The bad, he has a useless vision card, a trashy STMR honestly, 120 imperils and no weapon imperils, so that's the bad stuff, which ends up being a 4 out of 10 that way. He's just nothing special, honestly. He is an okay-ish tank. He doesn't really do much in terms of tanking anyway. So honestly, he's just a safe skip because neither the STMR nor the vision card are good, and I just don't see him ever being useful in any scenario, so yeah, it's fine to skip him. And then there's Superior being Hadlar. I rated him 6 out of 10 just for... He is a little bit worse than Baran. He only is really decent against humans, meaning there has to be some kind of trade-off. But the good things, he has a decent TMR for die units only, and a strong STMR in my opinion. The damage of his is decent, with variance in mind. He has 68% of Angela, so close to 69%, but alas. He's rather easy to build and has that 135 apparel to fire on the SLB. It's a +0 because it equalizes with the no weapon apparel on the other hand on the bad side of things. Meaning if he had both, it'd be +1, but he has +1, -1, that's 0. So no matter how I do it, it ends up on the same rating anyway. He is sadly on the bad side of the vision cards. He has a super boring SLB kit that just does nothing other than damage. He is hard luck to fire, and his damage falls off rather quickly versus non-humans, because it then is just a 301x LB. Okay, and I also updated Mage Popp with variance. He is higher up there, as you've just seen, so his rating increased from 2 to 3. And that is pretty much it for today. Thank you all for watching. We'll see each other on Thursday. Yeah, definitely Thursday, because Thursday is a public holiday in Germany, meaning whatever comes, if it's a challenge, I will do a video on that because I do have that time on Thursday, so that's cool. So have a wonderful rest of the Sunday evening, morning, afternoon, wherever you're from, and we'll see each other on Thursday. Bye bye.